We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Ave Maria Stella, Dei Mater Alma, atque semper Virgo, Felix te porta.
Christus vincit, Christus regnat, Christus impera. Everybody, Steve with Sesfidel. I'm coming at you another book review, Overcoming Worldly Concerns by Archbishop Alban Goodie, S.J. Obviously, if you're probably looking to my left, your right, that doesn't look like Alban Goodie right there. That's Michael Lichens, thankfully, talking about this because Alban is not around to do this interview. Time conditions, in a way, so he's in the other side. So, Michael, thank you for coming on. He's a fan of Archbishop Goodie's work, as I know a couple of books, but I'm sure you're more well read. So, thank you for coming on. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me on today.
So, who is the Archbishop Goodie?
He is one of those great spiritual writers from the early 20th century that has just disappeared in popular imagination because he died in 1939. So we had so many wonderful spiritual writers in the post-war era. But I think he's a gem from the late 19th, early 20th century that we really should remember. He was he helped with the Jesuits in, of course, Oxford and all over England before he was eventually moved over to Bombay, India, where he served as the archbishop there, one of the last non-Indian archbishops, I believe. I think the one after him was the last one before it became Native Indians who held that position. But he served there for years, got a reputation for very practical, reachable spiritual advice, usually encouraging people to look at the saints and copy what they do. And that was a success for him.
Yeah, I'm glad that they put a couple of his aphorisms in here. A friend is a friend who comes in when the whole world has gone out, and the enthusiastic to those who are not are always something of a trial.
Yes.
Yeah, think about that one. That's solid, especially when times of need and things like that. But how many of us are joking, laughing, and like Michael is just Michael's a joyous guy. I'm laughing. People get mad at people, myself and others, for joking too much or laughing too much. And we're supposed to be in this time of, you hear about all the bad news, which there's plenty of. So I guess we're supposed to go in the corner and pout and sulk. And I always bring up the Archbishop of Vietnam for the martyr, the original Little Flower. My name just escapes me right now. Theophane, Saint Theophane.
Yeah.
And the bishop's motto is 3 cheers for joy. And that's all his priests are getting killed, martyred, torn apart, and he still said 3 cheers for joy.
Absolutely. And it's also, I think of Thomas More, who had this great line that the devil cannot bear to be laughed at. And there's something to that's always been my theme from St. Thomas More, is that when evil is really overcoming you, it's one thing evil does not have is joyous laughter, and it doesn't know what to do in that phase. Laughter can, of course, be distraction. It can be a door to sin, but I think the joyful, the enjoyment of each other and finding joy in each other and that laughter it brings is one of the greatest weapons we have against the devil and his arrows.
Yeah, there was and I don't know if you can see it above me, but the altarpiece.
Yeah,
its translation is "walking joyfully." That's what's right above the altar right there, and that's them getting gutted.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we have to have that joy. Yeah, again, not acting like the Joker from the Batman or anything like that. So, overcoming worldly concerns. That's a great title for anything today as well. I mean, I'm sure it was back in the late 1800s for him, but Why this book for being republished?
I think it's because of the fact that it's very easy to be concerned when we were considering, whenever we talk about spiritual works that should be reprinted and put back out there, our big question is, does this help us engage with something that people are struggling with now? And worldly concerns that you almost, well, kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning, you're almost treated as kind of insane if you're not refreshing the news every 30 seconds, if you're not going on social media to get the latest opinions. You're kind of treated as if, well, are you paying attention even? It's like, yes, I am. But also, the Christian life realizes that this world is not all there is to human existence. And while we do need to be concerned about our neighbors, our loved ones, we don't necessarily have to be obsessed with this world, because we know there is something greater beyond it. And we should also be concerned about that life of our souls as well.
Yeah, I mentioned Garanger on the off before we started recording, and Peter and Paul, the feast day, he writes about the epistle commentary, mentions that this little town, a little hut of people praying, had more power than the entire army that was holding Peter in jail at that time, hoping against hope, and was able to end up bringing down an angel to wake Peter up. And he actually brings that up. Maybe we need to wake Peter up today. And he was talking about the Pope back then, not saying Pius IX was bad or anything, but he was even bringing that up. But yeah, prayer will do more than picketing, protesting. I think RJ actually says that too a couple months back. The Catholic way is not protesting. It's not picketing. It's getting on your knees and really hitting heaven up for things, and becoming saints yourself.
Yeah. In fact, Archbishop Goodie, in all of his writing, we had previously republished, and I had this as my bedside book for years, called Saints for Sinners, that, the saints for gamblers, the saint, will give you an example of a saint who had a particular struggle that many of us will have today. The saint who had impatience and things like that. It's showing that there's a great line actually in the book. I'm trying to find, whatever else they were men, eccentric if you like, offensive if you like, fanatical, misguided, but tingling essences of human nature, humanity at its boiling point. Basically, he likes to remind people over and over again, especially in this book, that the saints, some of them had supernatural guidance, many of them had particular revelations, but otherwise they were just like you and me. They struggled with impatience. There were people that annoyed them. They had trouble with their anger. But when we see that, we shouldn't go necessarily that, oh, well, if they were human, everything's okay. It's more that they overcame it, and they have the wisdom and the ability to show us how to overcome it too.
You go back to Peter and Paul. Peter denied our Lord. Paul was killing his followers, and they both had massive conversions.
Absolutely. You think about that with St. Peter, the one we started the papacy with, the very person. I think there's a line from Chesterton, something like the greatest chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So God made sure to get us our weakest link immediately by a guy who denied Jesus 3 times. We know from the Quo Vadis story that he almost did it again, wanted to walk away from his calling once, at the very end of life before seeing Christ, going back to Rome to be crucified all over again. He was not at all what we would call perfect. Like, most of us probably wouldn't even want to elect him to our parish council. And yet he was running the whole church then.
And some churches, they wouldn't let Christ run the council. So
very true.
That too.
Yes.
But you brought up the saints. There was a chapter here. The saints prove that you can overcome weakness and temptation. Is that kind of a spin-off chapter from the Saints and Sinners book?
It deals with a lot of the exact same themes. The Saints for Sinners, he goes into more. He usually picks one saint for each sinner in a chapter. So he'll do Ignatius of Loyola for those who are wasting their time, and how Ignatius saw his 2 broken legs and his time of immobility actually as a gift, and it was taken an inconvenience and realizing it was actually an adventure was St. Ignatius's secret. And then he goes through the other secrets of the saints. And that's all. I'll say not just in that chapter, but in almost every chapter, he'll find a saint for you to show that, look, they prove you can overcome temptation. They prove that you can overcome the weaknesses that you struggle with every day. Because it's often, no matter what your struggle is, whether it's lust, gambling, or in my case, it's just, that overwhelming sense of doom I often have. It's so lovely to go back and find a saint who very much shared that mindset and had that personality that's similar to what I have, and go, okay, well, if they could do something good with it, hopefully there's something I can do other than just, punching holes in my wall.
Well, and it goes back to Aquinas saying to his sister, if you want to be a saint, will it. It's not some kind of, get the books to read, but it's not there's not a book saying, here's how you be a saint. It's
yes,
if you want it or not. But I mean, you could have a book like that, but still, if you don't have the will to read it,
yes,
you have the will to actually pick up something or do something, or just like sport. I always bring up sports. If you want to make a team, you want it. You want to make it. You want to get on that starting lineup.
Yeah.
You do everything you can to make the team. You practice. You eat right. You sleep right. You do everything you can. But in the spiritual life, do we have that same heart for it?
Yes, exactly. And something Archbishop Goodyear recommends is starting with the small things and getting good at the small things. Yeah. And that's as old as spiritual advice as you can get. Like, even Jesus, what does he tell you to do? It's not go out and immediately save the world in your image. It's feed your neighbor. It's the simple things we can do in our own life. And it makes it so much easier because I can't fix our political system. I don't have that power. I wish I did. But if my neighbor is hungry or lonely, that's something well within my ability to fix. And, if you're not good at cooking, that's okay. You're still learning. And part of the spiritual life, like sports, like cooking, like writing, you have to take that first step and want to do it first. And then the rest will come as it comes.
That goes into I stole it from Brian McClanahan at the Abbeville Institute. Act locally, think locally. Okay. Even if you bring it to a local level, you might not be able to fix your governor right off the bat, but you can take care of your neighborhood. You can take care of your neighbors. You can take care of your community, your parish, etc.
Yeah. And from a personal thing, I can tell you right now, I am probably Catholic because when I first converted and I was really struggling with what it even means to be Catholic and how to do it, I had some very kind neighbors who would just give me a ride to church on Sundays. And it was a very little thing that took almost no time out of their lives. But for me, it was the greatest help in the world because not only did I have a reliable ride to Mass when I was first learning to be Catholic, I had people I had a little bit of community with going to and from Mass. We didn't talk very much, but that little action that was no work for them probably saved my spiritual life.
Speaking of what you can do personally, there's a chapter 17. You are called to heroism. And there's a part on there, kind of in the will thing that we just mentioned. It is true this type is not common. Not every man is a hero, whatever he might be or might once have been. Time saps enthusiasm. Goes back to the, are you enthusiastic about what you're doing, what you want to do, get to heaven? How much enthusiasm is in you? Coach always preached, have enthusiasm about what you're doing. You know, if you're getting before a game, you be excited for it. You're not just like, ho-hum. You go to Mass enthusiastic. You go to prayer enthusiastic. It's practice that one, as you said, one little thing good, do it better and better and better. Can you get enthusiastic a little bit better, more and more each day? Because it becomes easier to submit and justify our submission than to stand up and be shot for nothing.
Mm-hmm. No, that chapter has so many great little lines. He talks about the types of men and what type you should be aiming for. And he also compares the spiritual life to aging, which I thought was very helpful. Yeah. And he mentions, like, towards the end, it's true. Not every person looks heroic. Not all of us are going to win. I think he uses the example of the Victoria Cross.
Yep.
You know, we're not all going to win that. But God isn't calling for us to win medals or anything. He's calling us to be faithful, and faithful in the little things will mean that the greater things become much easier to do.
And you literally, before I jumped on that topic,
Yeah.
you basically brought up the chapter. I just lost it.
No worries.
20. You influence others by your example.
Yes. Oh, that's a great one. And that is such a hard thing to internalize and appreciate, because I think parents understand this at some point. Like, every parent has told me, if you want your kid to read, you need to be reading and things like that. I think parents can kind of understand that. But for a lot of us, we don't realize how powerful our example can be. Like, even, the epistles tell us that we need to be an example of love, ambassadors to Christ. And we hear that a lot, but I don't think we ever internalize how powerful that example can be. But any of us who are still Catholic in this day and age, we probably have someone in mind we think of, and we think about them, how they were able to do Catholicism a way that made it look easy compared to how we do it. And that person may not even know what an example they were being. They may not know what an influence. In my life, it's often been nuns and the typical working dad in my parish who has given me the most inspiration and guidance, because they make it look easy, and I just want that to be my life.
Well, we mentioned about the problems in the political sphere, world, etc. Here's one towards the end of the chapter. Talks about, we may resent, we may cry out with Cain, am I my brother's keeper? We may close our eyes to our surroundings. We may shut ourselves up, think of the Benedict option, in our castles and defend ourselves with moat and drawbridge. The fact will still remain that a man cannot be a good man without making other men better. A man cannot be bad without other men being the worst for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are all tied. We're in this together, as you heard before.
No, that's, again, a very Catholic take on faith and the life of the church, because I think so much in America is about individualism, especially our consumer culture. What do you want? If you have the money, whatever you want, it's good. Jokingly, if it's good for the soul, it's good for sales, they'll say. Or if it's good for sales, it's good for the soul. But we don't realize how much, like, when you look at the Christian life, especially the pre-20th century Christian understanding of community, God wants us to be concerned with our own soul, but he wants us just as deeply concerned with the souls of our neighbors as well. He doesn't want us, we're not here as individual island souls that only exist by ourselves and our actions have no effect on people. Our good acts will radiate, our bad acts will radiate. Something he takes pains to talk about even towards the beginning of the first chapter, that all of us who are trying to live the Christian life will have an effect on our community, even if we don't see it immediately.
Yeah, and it goes back to maybe burying your talent. I mean,
yes,
we're gonna. You hear that a lot today about people just we're closing the door, we're not letting anybody in, we're gonna protect everybody from the outside, which is in the mind a good thing. You should protect, but it's that, as you said, building a moat, putting the drawbridge up, keeping everything out. You're putting the light in the bushel, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And if you even look at, especially his life as a Jesuit, a lot of people have this mistaken understanding that religious orders and monastic orders are there so that you can escape the world and go inside. But if you talk to any religious person, anyone who's in a religious order, they'll tell you that becoming a member of an order like the Jesuits or the Benedictines is in fact to take the hard path. It's to confront everything that's inside of you so that you can go out into the world and be the messengers of Christ you're called to be. But yeah, we are not called. It's the strangest part of the Christian message. We need to ask God to save our souls because we can't do it by ourselves. And then we further have to ask God, well, can you help me save the souls of the people around me? Because I can't do it either. I can't even save myself. And this becomes the strangest calling of Christianity, to become saints so we can show other people how they can become saints.
Hey, I mean, even that Francis Assisi story about him just walking around town, and it was a brother said, "Hey, I thought we were going to be preaching." We did. Even something as simple as that, because Francis was a preacher. Anybody out there says he preached,
Yes.
but he could preach in many ways.
St. Philip Neri got the nickname the Socrates of Rome before he was known for his saintliness, because his ministry was mostly going around talking to people, asking them questions, learning about them, but then trying to challenge them in a way with usually the Socratic method, asking them questions. Well, what does that bring to you? What does that help you to do? And just doing that little work, he was usually not even, he wasn't pushing pamphlets in people's hands. He wasn't telling people, hey, we're having a book club this Friday. Though he would do that too. He would often have people reading books with him, but a lot of his ministry was walking around and engaging with people right where they were. But but you can imagine having St. Philip Neri asking you about your day, the amounts people would report, the immense love they felt just from asking them questions was so great that people often followed him wondering, well, what do you have that I don't? I need that. And St. Philip Neri, you probably know members of his oratory. His ministry is spread all around the world now.
Yeah, now today, if somebody walks up to you and asks that, they might look at you kind of weird. I mean, no, you can't ask me something. Siri off my dumb phone is supposed to ask me. I have a communication with Siri. I don't talk to people. I need my VR.
Right.
Nowadays, we're so the opposite of that. I mean, you can't think of it. Just walking up to the street. Hey, how you doing today? Strike up a conversation.
No, I heard a joke once that it's hard to do philosophy today because we're so worried everyone's trying to sell us something, that if you go up to a crowd of people and ask what is the nature of man, they'll immediately go, are you a cop?
That's true though. The only time people approach you in a store or anything or outside is the internet people, or they're trying to sell you something. Hey, what do you have for today? And all right, that's a cute kid. And that leads right into that. I mean, I do that when I do evangelization. I will pick out something like somebody's wearing I can't say the word Redskins anymore, the Washington Redskins jersey. That just popped in my head on that. Last time I saw somebody was that, hey man, how's your season? And then get them talking, you get them to the table. But even just that is hard to do for most people.
No, it's difficult. Like you said, like I know anytime people start a friendly conversation, I'm almost immediately like, all right, what are you selling, buddy?
Yeah, what's your angle?
Yeah, and when they're just being friendly, it's I've seen this done with some of the nuns I've befriended, that because they'll randomly talk to people when they're in a store, and it's so natural for them to do it, and I can't believe they're able to get through people's defenses so easily.
Yeah, they're cute. They're nice little nuns. They look the part. Yeah. Another part, everybody knows it. So I remember a friend of mine. He's a Redemptorist priest now. He walked in when he was a seminarian, and this is in Cowpen, South Carolina.
Oh,
there's no Catholics besides us. We were the Catholic Church in Cowpen. So at the time, my brother's in Catholic, and then now Father Martin, he's in Catholic, and he walks into a 7-Eleven, and everybody just stops, going, "What?" They haven't seen that ever in their lives. And I guarantee they've never forgotten that.
Oh, I'm sure. No, it's something I've seen with the religious orders that still wear the vestments and the old habits, is that they are able to get through so many people's defenses because from the outside, they're so clearly in the world, but not of the world. Like their very attire tells you that. And it's something I think we kind of missed out on after Vatican II. Like a lot of that, the clothing tells everyone that these are people, yes, they're in the world. They still have to eat. They still have to figure out how to pay the light bulb. They have to figure out how to do all this, but they are so radically outside of the world's concerns that it's kind of intriguing almost immediately. I think we even do it with, like I was reading somewhere that a lot of scammers now dress as Buddhist monks to try to get through people's defenses because they noticed that too.
And people will come up to them and ask.
Yes, exactly.
Well, what happened to now Father? People, what are you? And then that opens up a conversation.
No, it can go the opposite way too, where I remember a Dominican priest was on a college campus, and because he was wearing the white robes, the campus security thought he was a Klansman and they set up a panic, but he was not.
Yeah, that opens up a conversation for how the Klan got that mode of dress, the attire from the penitents in Spain. You see that every so often. Well, we're getting off topic. Anyways,
yes.
Chapter 4 is one of my favorite titles. God calls you to take responsibility for your choices. And one of his lines, we put the blame on others or on our circumstances or on our want of knowledge for things entirely our own fault. We plead ignorance, weakness, or inexperience. In 100 ways, we wrangle and writhe about to escape the pointing of the finger at us. Ownership. As I love, one of the biggest things of Jocko Willick's books is extreme ownership. Father Nolan brought me into that when I was out in Littleton, and it just struck ownership on everything, spiritual life especially. We like to blame the Pope, the bishops, the priests, but you're still, that's on, when come Judgment Day, you're not going to be able to blame the Pope.
No, as much as I'd love to blame my parish's education, it's like, yep, God's going to judge me, not my, our catechist is going to be judged differently and on what God judges them on. I love that chapter as well. I also, especially that particular line, there's also, I'm opening the book right now, but I recall that he was talking about that we can't, when it comes down to it, we can't put the blame on others, that at the end of the day, we have to own it ourselves. But he mentions, I cannot find it. This in many ways can be very good for us because so much of the world is outside of our control. So much of, and I mean, this just day to day, your job, you and I are lucky to work at Catholic Media, but I've done the corporate gig, and for a fact that your boss didn't give the order, his boss didn't give the order. Where did that order come from? Someone in North Carolina, we don't know. There's so much we have zero control over, and that we're just at the mercy of the whims of someone else, somewhere else, or groups of someone else's somewhere else, that it could be overwhelming. We think we have no control. And then here's this wonderful Christian message of yes, but you can control what you are. You can work on yourself. You can be the man in your own life. But it also means a lot of responsibility.
It goes back to a sports analogy there. Remember, when you mentioned that, my favorite jobs were when I was 1099 jobs. It was up to me. There was no salary. It was commission only. It was up to you to get the job done. If you didn't do it, if you didn't close the deal, you didn't get paid for it. Whereas if you have salary, you had that thing coming back in. It's kind of like a cast net. You can blame others in a sense. Oh, well, Bill's not doing this. Or sports-wise, the individual sports, bowling, golf. Yeah, you can't blame a teammate in golf. You can't blame something. You might be able to blame the oil in a bowling lane, but then you can adjust.
Yes.
So even in sports, it's hard to blame. You have to take ownership of every decision and move and swing you make. And same thing in the spiritual life. You have to own up to talking bad or listening to blasphemy or blaspheming yourself or being non-enthusiastic in mass or prayer or anything like that. That all comes into owning it.
Mm-hmm. No, and that includes owning the sins you've done. And that is, I almost feel like that is so countercultural now, because usually when you've done something bad, I've seen this in my own personal life where it's like, okay, someone did something horrific or terrible. It's like, well, they had a rough childhood. They don't have a very good sense of where things are. And I'm not saying those things aren't real. If you had a bad childhood, there's going to be some things that are going to be later for you to accept. But this calling, especially in the Christian calling of yes, all that is true. And while it's not your fault, it's still your responsibility. And only you can do anything about it. Only you can decide if you want to be saved or not. Only you can decide if you want God's love or not. And that puts the power right back in our hands. And it's both freeing, but deeply concerning.
Or a confession when you get your sins. Or that old joke, all right, when the wife walks in and tells the sins of her husband, and father goes, okay, now can I have yours? Or is he out there, can you bring him in for absolution?
Yes. No, I had a priest who often joked when he heard confessions, he always had to remind people, I'm here to hear about your sins, not the sins of everyone in the parish.
Yeah, the next chapter is even your forgiven sins leave sorrow in your soul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is he uses the great analogy. I think the first line is talking about doing great injury and comparing it to physical injuries. No matter what we do, our actions leave a mark on people. This gets into the whole responsibility, whether we're friends, how we treat our friends is part of our responsibility, and whatever we do, good or ill, is going to leave a mark on people. And that's God is wonderful, and he has the grace and mercy to give to us that even our worst of sins, even if you're the bad thief on the cross, you at the very last minute asking that you can come into Christ's kingdom, you can be saved. God is wonderful and giving, but all of our actions, all of our decisions, even the ones we've been forgiven for, will leave a mark on people. I know parents struggle with that all the time, that no matter what you're doing, you're going to leave a mark on your kids. And even if your children grow up to love and forgive you, that's still going to leave that memory to them. And it's a lovely, again, like so much of Archbishop Goodie's advice, it's freeing, but it also, with freedom comes the responsibility that then gets stacked on your back.
And Augustine writes about that. So he quotes Augustine, and life spends itself in sorrowing, but indeed there is no amendment. That's in the chapter if you can overcome weakness and temptation, but same point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he also discusses about contrition and why it's still necessary even after forgiveness has been given to us. That part of contrition and part of remembering why our sins have affected people is understanding that even after forgiveness, the wages of sin still remain. There's still death. And we can see that even our small sins can leave. Gossip is a good example we often use, because all of us have seen where gossip has really destroyed a person's life. And it's like, but it was just words spoken in a whisper by people, and yet it has utterly ruined this person. And even when forgiveness is done, that person's life is still ruined by the gossip that we did. And it's a reminder that we should never rely on God's mercy as a liberty to sin as much as we want.
In the another one I earmarked, there was the whole paragraph. Well, the whole chapter is fantastic, but the one on you must choose between good and evil, which correlates with every chapters correlate together. I mean, goes back to ownership. You're picking good and evil. I mean, there is no slavery like the slavery of evil. It saps the very desire of freedom. It blinds the eyes until they can see no other light. It stalks alongside like a hideous specter, terrifying its drunken victims until they dare not look to right or to the left.
Mm-hmm. And I love
all great lines in this.
He has some great lines. Actually, one of my all-time favorite lines in the book comes at the end of the chapter, where he just cries, "Poor blinded human nature, you are made for better things than this."
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the heart of all of God's calling, is that Pope Benedict has that great line of, "You weren't made for comfort, you were made for greatness." God made us for way better things than to just be angry sinners. And it's a wonderful message in this time.
What was it? I can't remember. Was it the Christmas message? Was it Leo the Great that said that? Christian, know your dignity.
Yes, it is.
But I like the same. It's almost the same part. Know who you are, what you were made in God's image, and be better. Oh, every day. It's goes back to what you said at the beginning about doing something better every day, or just the little things. You get up with that mindset. I'm going to do this better today. I'm going to do today. Is it? You don't have tomorrow, as Augustine talked about. Be the best you can in everything you can do today. And then when the day's over, do it again tomorrow.
Yes. And the beautiful thing about it is, this is a wisdom that goes all the way back to Aristotle. If you develop good habits, if you develop, great instincts, living a virtuous life is so much simpler after that. Doing the little things now, like learning to be charitable and patient with people who might need a little more patience. That's a hard one for me, because I'm I yell at people in my car. I'm not very patient, so I'm learning. But the nice thing is as you do it every day, it becomes so much easier than at the beginning, until eventually you start to realize you're just not annoyed by people every day the way you were.
I had it easy. I did Uber for 4 years, so I was
Oh
in the
my
car
gosh.
12 hours a day. So I remember they had to take us to a health test every year, and they took my blood pressure. It was, I don't know, it was like 110 over 70. They go, "Wow, you don't get really upset about anything." I go, "Do this job long enough."
No, talk about
Denver,
teaching you
Colorado.
patience. Oh
Yeah, that was in
gosh.
Denver, Colorado, where the traffic was nuts, and I would just sit there. People would zoom, 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 and you got to stay the course, keep focused. Kind of like that idea. Focus on your target. You got all these distractions, bad news here, bad news there, these temptations. You got to keep your eyes on the prize to be able to get to the end, or you get thrown off course.
No, I live in Denver, so I feel you in every way. Like, I can't imagine having to drive in that 12 hours a day.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was one dude I remember getting in it was 4:55 p.m. It was on just on the east side of the west side of I-25, right outside downtown. And he goes, "I got an airport plane leaving at 5:30 Thursday evening." I go, "Buckle up, we're going to hit the off roads." Got there in 15 minutes.
Well done.
He asked me, I asked him, "So you trust me?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Because I'm going to take some roads you're going to think I'm going to dump your body out of, but we're going to get there. Because the traffic's so bad, you can get the back roads."
Yep.
Gets to the idea. Get away from what everyone else was at the, who is it? It wasn't Climacus. If you want to be saved like the few, live like the few.
Yeah. Oh, sounds like John Climacus, but I don't know.
Yeah. See, everyone else is going this one route. You got to get off the beaten path and go do the harder things that isn't popular, isn't sexy, isn't nice looking to get to the end.
Right. And that's exactly it. I talk about a lot in these interviews that sometimes I feel like the true Christian message will never sell conferences because, while the rest of the world is saying you can do it, here's some great self-help books to show that you're the best person ever and everyone adores you. And then I, as the Catholic, have to stand up there and say, we're all going to die someday and we're all sinners. How do we reconcile that with our desire to be good people? And I wish that sold conferences. I do, but it doesn't always. But it is calling you to heroism, like this book, like Archbishop Goodie says, we are called to an extraordinary holiness. And when we look at it, that's impossible. That's why God answers us back with, well, with me, it's possible. All things are possible in God.
There's that one, chapter 13. Christ has influenced the world more than any other person.
Yes.
You just think about that. And the year Anno Domini, BC. Everything is, we're like Christmas. Even though it's hijacked by secular reasons, they still do it. Easter, everyone still does it.
Even when we changed it to BCE and CE, well, we're still calling it from Christ. So
yes.
No, and he is truly, that's one of my favorite jokes, by the way, like, oh, Christianity doesn't have any influence. Oh yeah, what year is it? But it's
his line is, we do not speak the year of Confucius, nor the year of Buddha, or the year of Luther, or the year of Napoleon. It's Anno Domini, the year of our Lord.
Yes. And it's also a remark like how much Christ, like when you think about it, if you were to remove all claims of divinity, which I don't know, not always the best idea, but if you were to just use your imagination, say, well, he was just a simple person living in the first couple decades of the Common Era or whatever. He still had, how did this homeless guy traveling around feeding people lunch change the world so phenomenally? And you have to like get down to it. It's like the only answer is, again, grace.
Yeah, I mean, you could pretty much go through an atheist and mention the prodigal son, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about. They might hate everything that you stand for, but they know of it. Exactly. They're not going to know. They might not know Gandhi's traveling or particular sayings. They know the sayings of Christ.
Exactly. And what I say is the greatest victory of the Christian message, when people who are non-Christians are criticizing us, they're criticizing us for not following the Christian message, which please do. I want anyone who is not a Christian to please call us always like, you're called to something better. And they do. They tell us that, like, you're not following the message that you claim to preach. And that's often the criticism we get thrown out to us. And that can be frustrating because there's nothing like someone who doesn't even believe in it trying to judge you by that. But at the same time, it's such a mark to our work that when we are judged horribly, we're not judged by the standards of the world. Even then, we're judged by our message and by what Christ has called us to do, even by the people who don't believe in Christ.
There's a line at the end, is the last chapter, is Mary exemplifies the greatness of what you are called. And he goes, at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow. At the name of Mary, every head shall be lifted up.
Yes. That whole chapter, like, obviously I'm a mama's boy. I love Mary, but and the name, and he also talks about that the name of Mary to us Catholics, it should make us proud. It should remind us of our special friendship that we're able to have with the Mother of Christ, who not only is the Mother of Christ, that's enough of an accomplishment right there, but she is also our chief intercessor, the one who is always praying for us. We know that at Fatima and the various apparitions. I'm going through the World of Marian apparitions again. So we know every time she shows up, she is there because she is praying for us and she's concerned with us. And that's, in many ways, she is a mother not only to the Lord, but a mother to all of us. And it shows that Christ never left us lonely.
There's a, where did I see it at? I got it up on the Sensus Fidelium site right now. It was The Afterlife, Purgatory and Heaven Explained. Father Dolindo.
Yes.
He has a segment on on Contemplating Mary. He goes, Father asked Bruno Cornacchiola the visions of Our Lady of Revelation. The guy, if no one's familiar with, we have it on the website. He was going to kill the Pope. Pope Pius XII had the dagger with his knife, with his name on it, and just immediate conversion. And Bruno, Father asked him to describe to him the beauty of the Blessed Mother's face. Bruno answered, it was a beauty beyond comparison, a most pure perfection of lines. All human beauty and all masterpieces of art disappear in comparison. Imagine a jewel case filled with the most precious stones, shining in the most brilliant colors. A light that fills with happiness does not dazzle. It changes at each expression with new light. Even compared with that, you still would not have the faintest idea of the beauty of her immaculate countenance.
I love that story. The story of Bruno, just everything about that story is filled with so much hope and joy. The fact that he had that revelation at Tre Fontane, which is the site where Paul was executed in Rome, and so much about that. But what amazes me is that is a testament to to the love Mary has and the grace that has been given to her, that just the sight of her in this instance where a atheist killer wants to, take out the Pope as a symbol, is suddenly converted. And in an instant, he no longer has that hate that was driving him by just seeing the love of Mary's face.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he just, okay, I'm not doing it anymore. I mean, he presented the Pope the knife, and then became like almost St. Paulish style, went to convert other people. He went out. He didn't barter the hedge. He didn't put the dock up. He didn't put a moat out. He went out.
Yes. No, he changed completely. God had made him a new man and it helped him to bury the old man. And then he went out and showed everyone what the new man was. And that is, it's amazing because he probably accomplished more in his small ministry, even though most of us don't know his name. But Bruno probably went out and accomplished more than any of us can do in our lifetimes by just that singular act of moving beyond the hate he had and being so moved by the love of Mary that he gave that, like you said, he gifted the knife that he was going to use to stab the Pope to the Pope. Then he also lived a life for his children. His wife reported that he was a much more loving and attentive husband after that. His whole life changed, and he was not afraid to show people that very love that he had felt.
and miracles are happening all the time at that place. So just look it up. I have a 14-part thing on the website that Fowler did, and the nuns have written me saying that series alone has just increased the traffic there in a major way.
No.
Michael, what else did I miss that you were wanting to hit on today on it?
Oh gosh, I would say, as an editor, this is maybe something I spend a little too much time thinking about. But for me, I love the way he uses the English language, like everything. The way he just has a way. He'll take a sentence and in just one sentence will blow your mind with the way he is talking about a particular subject. And in particular, I think coming from the very beginning where he is talking about the secret of the saints. Let me see if I can find that. But actually, this is one that was one of those lines. It's a strange thing how little we Catholics, who make so much of devotion to saints, really understand the secret of sanctity. We read the lives of the saints and we are filled with reverence and admiration. We see their statues in our church and we honor them. We look at their figures. He goes on, but he points out, and yet when we come to understand them better, how much they are alike our own, the same kind of trials and temptations just seem overwhelming to us. And just the way he uses the language to flip our assumptions of like, okay, honor the saints. And then he takes us one step further to say, yeah, but you can be a saint. You're called to be a saint too. And we hear that a lot, but I think sometimes we really have a hard time accepting that. And
was it the Pio story when the lady's trying to rip his robe off and
yeah,
tells, "What are you doing? I'm trying to get a relic. Make your own."
Exactly.
Yeah, we can do it if we want. It goes back to the will it. Do it. No one thinks about that. We can be. It's not just something that for people of old or on the other side of the planet. You can do it. You can do it too. Just don't get the pride about it. I'm all that. And yeah, but those guys thought of themselves as pretty much garbage. Just you read the lives of those guys, and I'm the worst sinner, because it's the whole idea of the more you know how much you screwed up, and you shouldn't have messed up, and you think you feel so bad about going, I know so much, and I still fell. Mm-hmm. I am at least that guy didn't know any better. You should know better.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No, and it's again the flip side of God's wonderful gifts to us. To whom much is given, much more is expected of them. If you were given great revelations, that's wonderful. God expects you to do something with that now. And that all of a sudden takes on a whole new light.
So, Mike, again, the book is, I forgot what it is already, Overcoming Worldly Concerns by Reverend Archbishop Alban Goodie. It'll be in the link in the show notes underneath. Sophia Institute brought it back. Along with, just click on his name right there and you'll find more books by Goodie, especially the ones, Saints and Sinners, that he was talking about before, and Good Galilean. I think there's others coming out, maybe. Yes. There's a photo of the dear Archbishop right there on the left. So if you have an idea of, who am I reading about? Who's this guy? And Michael, appreciate your time on this. Promote yourself. Tell us where they can find more of your work too.
Sure. Currently passing the torch for Catholic Exchange, which has been a website I've been running for ages now, but turn it over to Kristen Van Uden, who's doing wonderful work right now. But you'll still find my writings there at CatholicExchange.com. And we also include excerpts on there from various books from Sophia Institute Press.
Very good. Very good. Appreciate everybody listening. Again, this will be in the show notes. We'll have the links for everything that his websites, the book, etc. And again, I know I'm terrible at saying the following, but I'll try to remember now. Click like, subscribe, the bell, all that jazz. I never say that. I think this is the first time in how many hundred of videos I've said that. I do get shadow banned, believe it or not. So make sure you hit that bell and check it out every so often, because you might get unsubscribed, not because of me, because of our friends at Google. And anyway, God love you, and take care, and I'll talk to you later. Appreciate it, Michael. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Steve. It was a joy.